Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum and welcome to NEWSROOM. I'm your host Khalid, but today is the 11th of June 2024 and these are stories that we will be discussing during the course of the show. We'll begin with the preparation as far as the budget that is to be announced tomorrow is concerned. We all know that the Economic Survey of Pakistan 2023-2024 has also been announced just a couple of minutes back. In fact, and all the important details, the important modalities of how our economy has fared in the past year have been announced by the Minister for Finance, Mr. Aurangzeb. This and more will be discussed in our first segment. We'll be talking about the expectations that the common man has as far as the budget is concerned. What could the budget be all about and what has our Economic Survey 2023-2024 also has been about. Our second story, ladies and gentlemen, concerns Palestine war, day 249. We all know that a ceasefire proposal has been accepted by the United Nations Security Council, but this said Anthony Blinken is currently in the Middle East in order to somehow make the Israelis agree to this proposal. For the moment, it doesn't seem as if this whole proposal will be agreed upon by Israel. This has been seen a previous time as well in the United Nations Security Council. There was another proposal that was where the US had abstained, but Israel did not also comply with that. We will be also discussing different modalities of this conflict on its 249th day today in our second story. Then we are going to discuss NEGLERIA and the National Institute of Health that has issued an advisory regarding this very disease, and of course the different precautions that we need to take as far as NEGLERIA is concerned, because there are different areas in Karachi where we are seeing an increase as far as the patients of NEGLERIA are concerned. Finally, ladies and gentlemen, we are going to talk about the International Day of Play. Today is the first year that the International Day of Play is being observed across the world. Why are we observing the National Day of Play? How important is also playing for children, especially in this day and age when so many different societal and cultural tensions engulf our youth? This will be discussed as part of our last story. Let's begin with our first, and that concerns our budget 2024 and the national, of course, the Economic Survey of Pakistan 23-24 that has been announced just a few moments back. I'll announce my guests who are right here with me, and then I'll go to my correspondent who also joins us live. We've been joined by Syed Hassan Gillani. He's an economic reporter for PTV World and an old face as far as PTV is concerned, a huge contribution as far as your reporting and correspondence is concerned. Our second guest is Dr. Mahmood Khalid. He's a leading economist from Pakistan. Thank you very much. This is our first interaction. I hope this will be a first of many. And Musharraf Zahoor joins us live. Musharraf, thank you very much to have joined us. I think you are at the venue where the Economic Survey has been presented some time back. What if I were to ask you in a few phrases, what were the important points in the Economic Survey? What would your response be?
Oh, well, Finance Minister Mohammad Aurangzeb presented Economic Survey 2023-24 today, and he said that overall economic trajectory is very satisfactory and hope that this trajectory will continue in the next year. And he also said that IMF program will help Pakistan to develop its macroeconomic progress and maintain its macroeconomic progress. And he said that the previous IMF program also increased confidence of international financial institutions. And he also said that Pakistan's agriculture sector has really done well and that contributed to national economy. And he said that government is going to incentivize the farmers, and also he said that we are going to mechanize the agriculture sector. For that matter, a policy will be announced tomorrow in federal budget proposals for the year 2024-25.
Thank you very much to have joined us live from the venue where the Economic Survey of Pakistan 2023-2024 was presented. Let's come to our guests. We'll begin with Hassan. Hassan, you were there. I saw you at the Economic Survey of Pakistan 23-24. If I were to ask you the main highlights of it, I mean, Musharraf just talked about macroeconomic progress, our relationship with the IMF, the agriculture sector. I know that he talked about the current account deficit also that stood at $200 million. He talked about the inflation that has come down, the monetary policy rate, the exchange rate. Sure. But in a nutshell, what is the Economic Survey of Pakistan?
Well, if I were to summarize what the minister said, in the nutshell, The good news is that the main engine or the lever of the economic growth of the GDP is the agriculture sector. And in the last fiscal, we have seen that the agriculture sector has grown by 6.25%. We have had a bumper crop, and the agriculture sector is on the way towards development. On the large scale manufacturing side, we have seen that yes, there have been certain drawbacks because of the energy crisis, and also the fact that Pakistan had a higher policy rate, which has now been slashed by 1.5%. It is coming down. But the predictions are that in the coming fiscal year, we are going to see increased growth. The GDP growth has been in the negative over the last 2 years. We have seen that it went down to 0.25%. This year we are expecting more than 2%, but in the coming year the growth rate is even going to go higher. But the fundamental thing to note here, Omar, is that the minister, what I infer from his analysis is that he said that the most timely and the most vital step taken by the government was to go to the IMF for the 9-month SPA, the standby arrangement of $1.1 billion, because that gave the economy the much needed macroeconomic stability. From there on, we are taking it successfully. This is the 24th program that we are going to be entering with the IMF in, but expectations are that if all goes well, this is going to be the last program with the International Monetary Fund, because Pakistani government is endeavoring towards making sure that we now start to grow indigenously without the support of the global lenders.
All right. Also, Dr. Mahmood, Khalid, the fact is that if you include the SBA, only 2 programs with the IMF have successfully been completed in the whole tenure of these programs. So of course this bodes a lot for the caretaker government as well as the present government. Now coming back to the economic survey of Pakistan, our minister says the fiscal year 2023-2024 growth rate, as also alluded to by Hassan, is 0.25%, the lowest ever in decades, in more than in around 7 decades. The fiscal deficit between the income and expenditure in the fiscal year 2023-2024 is also one of the highest fiscal deficits, 6 to 7% of the GDP. What measures, Dr. Saab, need to be taken in the upcoming budget to improve on that? Because of course the budget is upon us, it already has, the document is there, it will be presented to Pakistan and the public tomorrow.
Well, one thing which we have to note is that whenever we are under an IMF program, whether it's after the engagement or preconditionalities, there is always going to be a kind of a slowdown in terms of our economic activity. But on top of that, what has happened is that because of the global recessionary phase as well, Pakistan actually had a double kind of maybe in which there was a low growth within Pakistan, as well as internationally there was higher inflation and the growth rates were slowing down. So from that perspective, actually the negative growth rate was for the last year which has completed previously, 22-23. For the year which is going to complete this time, this is going to be close to 2.38%. So we are safe. That means that we are on a positive trajectory. But on the budgetary side, one needs to understand is that the budget is the financial outlay of the government planning, that what are they trying to achieve over the next fiscal year. And in that context, since we are under the IMF program, we have to really cut down in terms of our expenditures as well as on the subsidies. So from the growth perspectives in the budget, we don't see much in terms of having a very kind of a higher growth rate targets. Even if you look at the target rates, they have just set it close to 4.5 for the next upcoming year. And given your population growth rate close to 3%, this boils down to net increase of close to 1%.
Alright.
That is because we are moving into a kind of a stabilization program in which the circular debts needs to be cut down. There has to be some state-owned enterprises which needs to be taken out of the balance sheet, as well as we have to curtail our expenditures. But what we expect as an economist from the outside, that we have to think out of the box. We have to think about how we can create more value for our public money. And that is only possible if we spend in terms of the most efficient targeted kind of spending. For example, if our public sector development program is going to be laid down, it should be only for those projects which are actually growth oriented. And other projects has to be kind of delayed for the next budgets in which we would have enough resources to come. So what we see from the outside perspective as an economist is that it is going to be a tough budget on the part of the government, because they have to curtail as well as they have to abide by different conditionalities put by the IMF, and at the same time try to protect the most vulnerable group. So for that, we are expecting that the Benazir Income Support Program outlay is going to be increased, because that is the major chunk which actually looks after the social protection of the country. As well as what we are seeing is that the energy tariffs have to be passed on, but with caution that the lowest users are going to be protected. So growth is not the primary objective of the next budget. It is going to be stabilization, but if they think out of the box, they can also add some growth component to it.
All right, you talk about thinking out of the box.
Yeah.
I'd like to understand, when it comes to taxation, how can we think out of the box? You know, an IMF statement notes that the Pakistani authorities plan to continue with strengthening public finances to reduce the vulnerabilities by improving domestic revenue mobilization through fairer taxation. My quote is fairer taxation. What methodology could or should be applied to strengthen public finances through fairer taxation in the upcoming budget?
Strong will, simplification of system. Umar, you need to understand that when we cite the example of developed countries such as Scandinavian countries, where we say that the system of infrastructure is par excellence in the world, their tax to GDP ratio is 40 to 50%, whereas ours is only 9%, which is not just lowest in the world, but also lowest in the region. So first of all, we need to increase our tax to GDP ratio. This can be done not by increasing the rate of the tax, but by broadening the base of the tax, by including the agriculture income into it, by enhancing the inclusion of sales, the wholesalers, the retailers, and automobile industry, lots of other sectors. So if we broaden the
But those
tax
sectors
base,
are quite wary of entering into the tax, and aren't they?
they are, and that's a challenge, that's a challenge for the government, for the regime. But I think now they're fully determined, and they, I was at the press conference, and the minister clearly said that there is no sacred cow anymore in this country.
Right.
Everybody has to pay tax. Every sector, every organization, every individual who is liable to tax has to pay tax. So this reflects the commitment of the regime towards not just streamlining the system of taxation, but also broadening and netting those who have so far been able to evade taxes.
Dr. Mahmood, coming also on taxation, should direct tax be enhanced? Should the indirect taxes be reduced? A lot of hue and cry has been made in the last few months, or as far as that is concerned. How could that be done in a way that could not only trigger investment, but also support higher economic activity?
Well, I'll connect it to your last question, where we think out of the box. Actually, we did a press conference yesterday, and Gillani was there as well, in terms of how we can actually reduce the taxes while we can achieve growth as well as revenue. I'll give you a quick example.
Sure.
We have got around 85 types of withholding taxes. Basically, this is the job of the FBR, but currently being done by the businesses on behalf of the FBR. So what we think is that this is something which is a nuisance for the business. This is the job of the FBR, where they should actually implement what their modalities or the function requirements are. So what we think in terms of broadening the tax base, as Gillani has mentioned, is that simply abolish the filer, non-filer distinction. Go all out. Whosoever needs to file the returns, whosoever needs to be brought into the tax, we have to bring them up. Unfortunately, what has happened over the past many decades is that we have been thinking about the second or third best solutions. For example, thinking about a fixed kind of a tax rate in which you are not going to be asked that what is your actual size of your economic activity and others. So this is what the third best approach is. The best approach is that simply ask them that what is your due liability and please pay it, because if you don't, that means you are not becoming part of the overall economic activity.
So at one time you're out of the box, at the same time you're simplifying the process.
Exactly, that is what is embedded in this, that if you can create simplification, then everybody would be willing to pay tax. I'll give you again a quick example. There are close to 700 pages of legal wordings which everybody who's paying income tax need to learn and need to abide by. But that's impossible even for a person like me. I'm holding a PhD degree in economics. I can't read all the 700 pages. So the FBR needs to simplify the system, try to bring in the people to pay taxes by simplification, by taking out that individual inspector culture from it, in which the persons visit the businesses and they try to threaten them in terms of saying that this is your liability or you bribe us, and make it such a simplified system that everybody is actually paying their part and becoming part of the growth process.
And if I could just add one point.
Okay.
Just yesterday we were handed over a very wonderful document by PIDE, compiled by Dr. Saab and other people. It says that the main thing that actually discourages a filer from filing tax, be it an individual or an organization, is the fact that our tax regime is constantly changing. In the other countries, the changes occur once in a decade, whereas in our case, we go to the bed and there are different rules. We wake up and the rules have changed. So we need to make sure that the policies, the initiatives, the measures are all stable and consistent, and they are there for not just years but decades, so that there is confidence among the payers to abide by or comply by the rules set by the FBI.
But you know, Hassan, that when you talk of consistency, that also depends on the political administration. We've seen that with the advent of every new government, they've always changed the policies that the previous government had. A consistency, especially when it comes to economic policies, is primordial in this day and time, when our first job should be to strengthen Pakistan economically. Dr. Saab, you know, I was looking at some of the pointers that the Minister Saab talked about when it comes, when he, addressed the media. He talks about the value of rupee that has depreciated, but he also talks about the FBR that has achieved 30% growth in revenue connection, and talks about the fiscal deficit that is 3.7% that you pointed out as well. He talks about agriculture that is expanded by 6.25% that Hassan has alluded to, and the industrial and services sectors that have witnessed 1.21% growth. When it comes to the industrial and services sectors, what should we expect from the budget, from this budget that will be announced tomorrow, and what should be the friendly policies that could not only benefit the industries and the services sector but also Pakistan's economy?
Well, what happened earlier was that since we were targeting the current account balance, we had put so many duties at the import stage that practically the businesses were crippled. The inputs were not provided to them. So what we have proposed in the document which they have mentioned is that the businesses should be given some relief, and the additional custom duties, the regulatory duties should be taken out, because if you don't get the raw material inputs, this is the world of connectivity. We can't live in silos. We need to integrate with the rest of the world in which there is going to be inflow of the inputs, and our producers are going to create value and they are going to be able to export it. But having said that, whenever we are looking towards the budget in terms of what is each sector going to get, this is actually a wrong approach. What we think is that the budget should be seen that how much it improves the markets, how much it improves the system. Because when we talk about that what each sector is going to get, practically what comes in mind that what are the subsidies which are going to be provided, what kind of tax reliefs are going to be provided. In nowhere across the world, taxation is used for incentives such as exemptions. Only in Pakistan, the tax exemptions, which we call as tax expenditures, are close to 40% of our tax revenue. So if you simply take out those exemptions and ask the person that this is your due liability and you have to pay it, then we can increase our revenue by 40%. And what do we mean by that? For example, exporters. We really love exporters. This is something which we all agree on. But it does not mean that only if you're exporting, say, $1,000, then you would be an exporter and you should be provided with all kinds of reliefs. There has to be some sunset clauses. There has to be some kind of a performance guarantee.
All right. Now, Dr. Saab, I'll have to stop you here because I want to ask one question from each of you, and I want a very quick answer. What measures need to be taken? Before that, Hassan, he talks about, subsidies, and this brought me to a very interesting question. Do we need austerity measures, subsidies, tax reliefs to be part of the upcoming budget? If so, or if not so, what should such measures be in your point of view?
I can tell you one thing, Omar. The fundamental thing that we are now seeing happening is, it's a very great thing. I mean, we are seeing that the interest rate is coming down. 20.5% is the current rate. Now this would lead towards development of the large scale manufacturing, because the inflation is coming down, and with that accordingly the rate of the state bank's policy rate is also coming down. So as a result of that, we are going to see in the next couple of years more jobs being created, more industries being set up, and the the contribution of the LSM, the large scale manufacturing, as you know, in the GDP.
The ministers are also pointed towards that.
Absolutely. So what you're expecting is that as a result of this betterment, the large scale manufacturing will grow, and as a result of that, of course, we are going to see higher economic growth.
All right, let's come to this year, 2024, 2025. Dr. Saab, last question to you. What measures, in your point of view, if I were to ask you in a nutshell, in 2 or 3 phrases, need to be taken in this upcoming budget to enhance income generation?
Income generation is directly linked with employment. This is what this economy actually needs. So what we think is that first, all the public sector development program should be looking towards that income or GDP growth enhancement. No projects which are not giving us any economic growth should be funded. That's one. Second is that the government has to take one step back. This is what we call as the zero-based regulation. Every regulatory authority has to sit down and convince us that X amount of regulatory requirements, documentations are necessary. Otherwise, let the businesses grow. That should be also part of this budget. And lastly, all the government departments, these are not lesser than state-owned enterprises. Every ministry has budgets running in billions. So every ministry has to be assigned a task in terms of certain outputs, and that should be made transparent and publicly available so that there is some kind of an oversight where we can actually say that suppose if we were to give 200 billion to you, what is you going to give us as a ministry? The principal accounting officer has to be held accountable. As per law, it is written that they have to write a performance contract. Those performance contracts should come in this budget, where every department, when their demand for grants are going to be approved, along with that the performance contract should also be attached and presented in the budget for approval.
All right, wonderful. Thank you so very much. We are a bit short of time, but I think tomorrow we'll be back to discuss the budget and what have been the important points as far as the budget 2024-2025 is concerned. But thank you very much to the both of you to have joined us. Hassan Gillani, economic reporter for our channel PTV World, and Dr. Mahmood Khalid Saab, economist, and of course our first time guest, and as I said, a first of many times. Thank you very much to the both of you. Let's come to our second story, and that concerns the Israel-Palestine conflict. Today is the day 249. We've been joined by 2 important guests. The first is, of course, Dr. Jamil Ahmed Khan, who joins us quite after a hiatus. He's a former ambassador. Dr. Jamil, thank you very much to have joined us. What a pleasure to talk to you after such a long time. Now, let's begin without further ado. The United Nations Security Council adopts a US drafted resolution that supports a ceasefire plan in Gaza. Washington has begun an intense, diplomatic mission in order to appease all the parties concerned, especially Israel. Now, the text has been passed with 14 votes in favor and Russia abstaining. Russia had already asked for certain amendments as far as this text is concerned. Hamas says that it agrees to this truce plan and of course does is in conformity with what this text says. Israel's UN ambassador says after the vote that the country will not engage in meaningless and endless negotiations which can be exploited by Hamas. What are the repercussions this time? We all remember there was another resolution that was passed some time back which the US had abstained from, but also nothing happened as a result of that. And also, how do you see Blinken's Middle East diplomatic mission to push for this deal? Will he be able to convince Israel? What's your take on that?
Blinken is now in a quagmire. Basically, Blinken or the President of the United States, most of the presidents of the United States, they have no choice but to keep supporting Israel, whether they are good, bad, or worst, but they are required to support. And I would refer to one of the books which is written by an American author, professor in Chicago University, John Mearshaw. So he has written about the Jew lobby. So basically, Jew lobby in the United States is so well entrenched that any decision of the president that is always influenced by, or any decision by the Congress is influenced by the Jew lobby, which is, according to the book, it works very strongly and works on each Congress member. So that's one part. The second part is Joe Biden. Why he's in quagmire is that Joe Biden is now very close to the election. The recent surveys, except for the last one, were a slight improvement in Joe Biden's supporters and voters. But the previous survey had really shown him sliding down. So that is one part. The second part is the public pressure. And public pressure not only in the United States, but also in the Arab countries and other countries. Public pressure, so those rulers are definitely influenced. No, some of the rulers, probably they would find very difficult to retain their chair, or to retain their position as the head of the state or head of the government if the public pressure continues like that. Although there could be another argument that there's so much of public pressure, it didn't work. But ultimately it does work. And then comes the geopolitical, the changing environment and circumstances. Very recently, the Arab cooperation, Arab state cooperation with China, there was a summit, there was a conference in which the Chinese President Xi Jinping, he had told them that we will arrange a peace conference. And remember that they already have that AIIB and BRI and so on and so forth. So they have started drawing the parallel institutions, the Chinese. So that could be another pressure. But let's come back to the Joe Biden. Why is in quagmire that the Joe Biden, after seeing his election coming very close and losing so many votes, supporters of the atrocities, supporters of against the voice against the Israeli atrocity. So that was perhaps the reason that they had to really assert a little more. But there is another counter argument that if they are so serious, why don't they really stop supplying the arms, ammunition, and weapons? So far, 70 tons of the arms, ammunition, and explosive has been, used against the Gaza people and against the Palestine. So once we have all these factors in our mind, now let's come to the Security Council resolution. Security Council resolution of 13th March also asked for the ceasefire. Security Council resolution 27th November 2023 also asked for the ceasefire. Nothing happened, but this time it appears that the pressure is a little higher and there might be some difference. Although Israeli ambassador, as you have yourself mentioned in your intro, that what was his wordings after the resolution was passed. So Israel seems to be, thinking still that it's a meaningful negotiation, and we have to bear in mind several statements of Netanyahu and other ministers there that they want a complete elimination of Hamas. But their on-ground operation indicates that they really have raised the entire Gaza to the ground, and more than 37,000 people already have lost their lives. So basically, they want Gaza to be totally unlivable. And that's why there is a case in the International Criminal Court.
Yes, I agree, Dr. Jamil, but the fact is also that despite the United Nations Security Council resolution having been adopted, the barbarities in Rafah continue. People have been killed even after the United Nations Security Council resolution was adopted. I come to my studio guest, Saira Ijaz, senior analyst. Saira, thank you very much to have joined us. Saira, this is a three-phase truce agreement that we have been hearing since quite some time that was proposed by Joe Biden. Now, I'd like to understand there are different people who are saying different, or who are casting different aspersions as far as this truce is concerned. Some say there's a political angle to it because the elections are going to be held in the United States of America, and that is why Joe Biden is pushing for some kind of a ceasefire solution, so that tomorrow when he goes to the public to demand for votes, he can come with some kind of a guarantee that, see, this is what I did for the Muslims, this is what I did for the people in the Middle East. Secondly, there are certain concerns that have been raised. Russia raised some concerns, and that is why it also abstained this time from this United Nations Security Council resolution. Israel has a lot of question marks as far as this is concerned. We all remember the last time when the US had abstained from the resolution. Nothing happened as far as applicability of that resolution is concerned. Will it be the same this time? What are these concerns? Will some ceasefire happen eventually before it is way too late?
First of all, I would like to say that this is very valid, that it is one of the election stunt played by the Joe Biden and he formally announced it on 31st of May. There is no doubt about it. And there is a catch-22 in this whole, agreement or the ceasefire agreement, three-tier or the three-phase plan, because what is the main conflict? The main conflict is that, and it has that the both states, the both people, they want their own states. The only solution is two-state solution, and there is no mention of it in this whole, plan. Have you ever read or have you ever gone through a single time that there would be a two-state solution in this agreement? So for me, when I just went through it, and I saw, it's a very good thing, because with every passing day, every human being's heart bleeds after seeing all these, inhuman and what you can call it. If I see one image, I can't sleep. So so there is a catch-22 in it, and I believe that it's nothing but. One should be hopeful about it, since there is lots of pressure. Many, almost 143 states. Recently, Slovenia has also recognized the state of Palestine. These all are positive signs. But I tell you, might is the right. They are not going to, hand it over to the plate, this ceasefire. Right. And I think you mentioned that before. It's too late. It has already been too late.
Agreed.
I think the way they have damaged, they have done this massacre to that very innocent human beings. I would not call them Palestinians, Muslims. They are simple human beings, and so called in this age of technologically advanced age, in this age of AI, we are still as barbaric as we used to read in the books and heard about the barbaric wars and killing of human beings and butchering them. Nothing has changed. It's all the way or the style has changed. So I think I have also a big question mark in it. Until unless there is no mention of two-state solution, every state, according to the international laws, according to the United Nations Security Council's format and pattern, the way all other states are enjoying their legal, human, international laws, this thing will not going to be solved.
All right. Dr. Jamil, coming to you, the United Nations, Jordan and Egypt are holding a humanitarian aid summit for Gaza in Jordan. Now, this is being hosted by Jordan to ascertain the situation in Gaza and also look for solutions, whether it be accelerating the process of delivering and providing humanitarian assistance, whether it be identifying ways to strengthen the international community's response to the catastrophe, whether it be identifying the logistical and supply needs, whether it be the commitment for a collective coordinated response to address this situation in Gaza. Will this summit succeed where others have failed?
Well, summit, it can't be more stronger. It can't be stronger than the Security Council resolution. But the summit, all the mediators are there in that summit. And Hamas has already said after the resolution that he is ready to negotiate, he is ready to talk to the mediators. So Hamas, if he gets the whole sense of the resolution, what they were expecting, because there are certain things which are unclear, which is with the Russian permanent representative and Security Council while abstaining. He did mention about that. What is there in the resolution, which Israel is going to give to for the peace plan. So, and what's to that effect? So, I think there's already some skepticism, and Hamas has conditionally accepted it. So it appears that there are so many stumbling blocks that Israel on one side is not really willing to stop. Somewhere or the other, they want to achieve their goals, which they have spelled it out in very clear terms, that they want to totally eliminate Hamas. And in the process, they have eliminated 37,000 civilians and more than 85,000 people injured, and children and women, and we keep every day finding that the scores are going high and high and high. But then it becomes very hard for me to see that it's going to be implemented anytime soon. Although Joe Biden, as I said, to have a political mileage, or perhaps he might be a little serious about it. But if he was serious, he would have just asked his warships to move from that position where it's giving protection to Israel and stop its armed denomination. He's already supplied more than 70 tons of the armed denomination to Israel, and it's continuing. So Blinken did say about 451 billion or so as an immediate aid, and then about more than 1 billion for the reconstruction in the last phase of the peace plan, which is a part of the Security Council resolution. Blinken is that people should agree, but my understanding is that all these efforts are going on. The hostages released, and the hostages, Hamas doesn't seem to be releasing the hostages without exchanging the prisoners. The prisoners mention is hardly anywhere, and even if they mention it somewhere, I don't think they are going to really exchange it in a very clear way. And equally important prisoners are equally important persons against the hostages. So there are so many stumbling blocks that it appears that Israel is not really willing to stop it at this stage. The Israel leadership mind is very clear that they have made up their mind perhaps to totally eliminate the population from there. And why they are doing that? Because that is already recognized by the International Criminal Court about the genocide. And what is genocide? Genocide is basically elimination or extermination of the people, or mass killing is also known as the genocide. So they are already in that process, and they've done it in 1948, where once they raised about 524 villages to ground, and they pushed all those people to Gaza at that time. In 1967, they further pushed them to the narrow strip of the Gaza and Rafah. So now again they are trying to tell them all these steps further.
But I don't know what's going to happen, Dr. Jamil. To be very frank, as you yourself said, that Israel has its apprehensions, and until and unless Israel is not part of the equation, there will be no solution to this issue. Thank you very much, Dr. Jamil Ahmed Khan Saab, former ambassador and our leading foreign affairs analyst, who have joined us. And thank you very much to be part of this show after a long hiatus. Finally, Saira, Ijaz, I'd like to understand, our Deputy Prime Minister and Foreign Minister Mohammad Ishaq Dar also addressed this very summit, this humanitarian aid summit for Gaza. He talks about not only the condemnation of the Israeli atrocities, but also for humanitarian aid. He talks about immediate ceasefire in Gaza. He talks about international community that needs to press Israel to stop brutalities, and that the UN and other organizations need to take steps to save people of Palestine and withdrawal of Israeli forces from Gaza. How achievable is all of this?
Everything is achievable. Nothing is impossible in this world, and we have seen many peaceful agreements within this in between the states as well. But as for, because since it's a very complicated issue, and it's a war between, you know, the mightiest and the innocent ones, or not that. So I think these are very and every state, not only Pakistan, but Pakistan being the a very important prominent state as a middle power in not only in South Asia but at a global level as well, has its own importance despite the challenges we are facing right now economically and politically. But nobody can ignore the importance of Pakistan as a nuclear state, as a middle power,
as a responsible Muslim state as well.
As a responsible Muslim state as well. As far as aid is concerned, nowadays the major concern is that recently the US pier, that floating fleet which was prepared to deliver aid to the Gaza.
That is an option that has not worked well, and that is what has also been said in this humanitarian summit, that the normal road route needs to be re-established, opened, so that aid can reach at the earliest to the people who are in desperate need of not only the food and water but also the medicine, also the different kinds of modalities that they need at the earliest before it's way too late. Thank you very much, Saira. We are a bit short of time, or else we would have continued our conversation. Saira, Ijaz, senior analyst, thank you very much to have been part of our show. Let's come to our last two stories very, very quickly. The National Institute of Health has issued an advisory regarding the primary amoebic, NEWSROOM, which is also known as PAM, or brain-eating amoeba. This is an infectious disease of the central nervous system. Now, deaths that have been related to this have regularly been reported from some hospitals in Karachi during summer since the year 2008. Now, according to this advisory, high temperatures which are associated with poor chlorinated water during early summer pose a high risk as far as NEWSROOM is concerned. To mitigate, it is imperative to undertake immediate and long-term preventive measures in mega cities, and of course that is extremely important when it comes to any disease. Finally, today is the International Day of Play, ladies and gentlemen. The first ever International Day of Play is being observed today all across the world. It marks a significant milestone in efforts to preserve, to promote and to prioritize playing so that all the people, especially children, can reap the rewards and thrive to their full potential. Because what is play? It is a universal language that is spoken by people of all ages, transcending national, cultural and socio-economic boundaries, and this shared passion fosters a sense of community and of national pride. With that, ladies and gentlemen, we come to an end of today's newsroom. We'll see you inshallah tomorrow with, of course, a huge transmission on the budget that will be announced tomorrow. Till then, stay safe. Allah Hafiz.